0973.
10 minutes before 8 is the time. Back to our conversation about doctors in a moment, but let's get on to these headlines. Worrying headlines in many instances about shortage, and looking at some supermarket shelves which are appearing a little bit bare, but the government taking action, it would appear. Conservative MP and Transport Secretary Grant Shapps joins me now. A word that many of my listeners don't yet know, but you're going to explain to them in 60 seconds or less. Cabotage, Transport Secretary. What exactly is that? Good morning.
Morning. Yeah, it's a transport term, originally from the French, which it basically means that when somebody comes here, in this case, in a HGV, in a lorry, to deliver some goods here, they are then allowed to, using cabotage, pick up other loads and drop them off and carry on doing so under the rule changes we're making for a maximum of 14 days domestically before they must return to wherever they came from overseas. That is cabotage. It's the ability to pick up and drop off within the domestic market.
When will the relaxations kick in?
Before the end of the year, and it's yet another measure that we're taking to try to ease the supply chain squeeze, which is very much a global thing. We've got every country in the world seemingly with a squeeze coming out of coronavirus and the expansion of the economy going on. None more so, it should be said, than in the UK, where we're the fastest growing G7 country this year. And that means that there's a big premium on people like lorry drivers right now.
Before the end of the year, there are troubling headlines that you'll be aware about supplies for Christmas. Shouldn't we try and bring it in before the end of next week?
We have to change laws, and I'm afraid they take time to do. But this is one of very many. It will be in place before Christmas, and it will be giving a hand, therefore. But it's only one of 25 measures that we've taken to ease the path of HGV drivers, and it's working. We've got 3 times as many HGV drivers applying for their provisional licenses every single day now than before the coronavirus hit back in 2019. So we're getting more domestic lorry drivers. That's a very good thing. They've been undercut for years, and we haven't had enough people coming into this market, and that means that we've been reliant on importing overseas people to drive lorries here, which means that people weren't being paid the proper price here. We want a higher wage, higher skill economy, and we think it's a good thing to see those salaries rise so that people get a decent amount of money for a day's work.
Did the relaxation of the EU drivers working in the UK that came about, has that borne fruit? How many drivers do we have on our roads?
So we actually have a lot of EU drivers and non-EU drivers, but from elsewhere, on our roads, but primarily because they're coming here anyway to deliver things. So what I'm describing today doesn't require a visa, and the visa route isn't the route A that we want to go, and B is not the sort of the answer to our problems.
But we did try it, didn't we, a couple of weeks ago? We did.
Yeah, of course, you'll recall we had some of the road haulage organisations telling us this was the only answer. Well, listeners will have noted that the petrol station queues have been dealt with, but it hasn't. No, the answer hasn't really been importing workers to do jobs that actually Brits can do, and for a proper day's wage are very happy to do as well. So the problem is we're seeing it resolved through the 25 different measures that we've taken, and this cabotage will be another assistance. But
how many overseas drivers did we attract? Do you know how many we actually added to our fleet?
Very, very few. I mean, I think that the
number.
Tanker driver, the tanker drivers in particular was a particular interest, as you recall, because of the queues we were seeing. But was just dozens, not hundreds, not thousands. And we always said, actually, we don't think this is the answer.
Why did you do it then, if it wasn't the answer?
Well, the haulage associations were insisting that it was.
I see. So the haulage associations tell the government what to do now, do they?
No, far from it.
Oh. But why did you do it then?
Nick, let me get a word in here. I think it's right. I think it's right that you test every avenue, isn't it? If you've got something like this happening, you want to have a look at whether you don't want to leave any stone unturned. We've turned that stone. It's not the solution that the haulage, some in haulage thought it was. Actually, the solution, as we've always thought, is to train up British workers to do the job. And 25 measures that we've taken to streamline getting an HGV licence have meant that we're seeing 3 times as many people apply. We've now got spaces for people to do the test, which was the other big concern after coronavirus. Tens of thousands of lorry drivers couldn't take their tests to get their lorry license, we now have space. So I have 615 test space available this week for people who want to pass their HGV tests. It's the first time we've had real capacity in the system for a long time, and it means we get more domestic drivers.
I guess I'm sort of drilling down to numbers because you'll be aware that we're seeking for EU meat workers or butchers to come to this country, around 800, to try and avert the pig culling crisis. Why would they want to come here? It wasn't a great success with HGV drivers. Why will it work with butchers?
Well, they're different schemes, and there's always been a tradition of having sort of temporary seasonal workers come to this country. They're already, this is an existing visa scheme, which is people are already eligible under, and we do see larger numbers of people come to, for example, work in seasonal picking. In this case, to assist with butchers for visas on a temporary basis for 6 months. But it's not the only part of the package again on the pig industry being announced today. There's also government-funded storage aid scheme for slaughtered pigs and a pork levy holiday as well.
Remembering when I asked you a few weeks ago, or a week or two ago, when you last got petrol for your car and you told me that you had an electric car, you're probably going to be turning out now to be a vegetarian. But do you think you'll have turkey, should you so desire, and pigs in blankets on your Christmas table?
I'm far from a saint when it comes to these things, but the electric car is something that...
Yes. But you'll probably turn out to be a vegetarian. Will there be sausages and turkey for Christmas, Mr. Shapps?
Yes, there will be. I'm not turning out to be a vegetarian.
And we'll all have our Christmas meals. You're safe. We can rest safe.
We will. And look, I think we have to be very careful not to sort of try to report ourselves into a crisis. I was looking yesterday at the headlines about Felixstowe, where a single ship was rerouted by Maersk, who are the world's biggest shipping line. And Felixstowe is our biggest port. I've been in touch with both Maersk frequently. I mean, but as part of doing business, divert ships all the time. In fact, they're diverting far more from European ports like Le Havre and elsewhere. There's nothing exceptional or unusual at all about a single ship being diverted. I spoke to Felixstowe last night. They were telling me at any one time there may be a ship waiting to get into port. That compares with 60 ships waiting to get into the Los Angeles port. There is a global supply squeeze, but actually we're handling it pretty robustly in this country. We will have our goods for Christmas. And I have to say, compared with where we were last year, where our concerns were that we'd be able to see friends and family at Christmas during the height of coronavirus, we're in a considerably better position this year.
Just coming back to drivers, you were probably aware of the report last week that said there might be as many as 4,000 HGV drivers who are waiting for their paperwork. These are new drivers coming online to be processed by DVLA, where around 40% of staff are behind their desks and 60% of staff are not behind their desks, and accessing medical data is not something you can always do from your home. How acceptable is it we've only got 40% staff at DVLA, Secretary of State?
Yeah, just let me correct that story that you read last week about the 4,000 applications. I mentioned that we've got 3 times as many people applying. That's about 1,000 people a day. So actually, if anything, we have massively sped up the speed at which people are getting provisional licenses, which is what that number was about.
Right.
There's no people who've applied for HGV licenses. We're turning them around in less than 5 days, and that includes doing medical checks. So actually, it's a much faster service than people will have experienced.
So you don't mind only 40% of staff at DVLA?
No. But I think it's really important to, of course, for people who need to be in front of those databases that can't be accessed from home because of privacy reasons, or need to be physically handling those documents, to be able to be in work to do that. And we have seen people return to work. DVLA has been subject to a very lengthy strike, I'm afraid to say, over the period of coronavirus, and I think that's very regrettable. I don't think there's any good reason for that. There were a lot of health and safety measures put in place during that period, including allowing people to work from home, and I hope that strike comes to an end now.
Last couple of points. Insulate Britain are going to give us a suspension of their protest, which we all celebrate. They've written an open letter to your boss, the Prime Minister. The campaign of civil resistance will be stopped. As of October 25th, when they might come back online, they say that your government is loath to put people in jail to coincide with the COP conference. Are they right?
Well, governments don't put people in jail. The courts
to practice
put people
laws.
in
You know
jail.
what I'm saying.
And
Mr.
they
Shapps.
do that when injunctions are broken. I have to say, I think drivers will agree with me. What they're doing is pathetic, dangerous, irresponsible, counterproductive. And the fact that they then apologise to drivers for the delay, distress they're causing is absolutely unacceptable. I've seen a van driver who lost his job because he was an hour late on TV. I saw an HGV driver who was trying to deliver fuel during the fuel crisis the other week. A woman who was trying to visit her mum in hospital. Parents trying to get their kids to school.
We had
These
a bloke
people
who was
have
off
no
to.
right
We had a guy who was off to insulate homes, and he was stopped by the protesters. So he was actually, his job is to insulate homes, and he couldn't get to the houses.
You couldn't make it up. And stopping this till the 25th.
Will people go
not
to jail
sufficient.
obviously by legal process, not the government? You're not loath to see some of these people put behind bars if they break injunctions?
No, look. The whole point about getting an injunction is that it means they're in defiance of the court, contempt of the court, and the courts, I suspect, will not take that kindly at all. So, of course, people should go to jail if they continue to do this. Over 100 doors have been knocked on. Injunctions have been physically served. More than a dozen people now are being taken back to court for contempt of court. And of course, I wouldn't deign to tell the courts what to do.
No, indeed.
But I would certainly not be crying into my Weetabix if I saw pretty strong action taken, because there is no reason why law-abiding citizens should be inconvenienced like this.
Lastly, do you share the sentiments of the Queen about leaders and COP26 when she says that those who talk but don't do are so irritating?
Well, look, I don't want to sort of be dragged into Queen's private comments over her, but what I would say is that COP26, enormously important, taking place next month. It will bring together, under British leadership, vast parts of the global economy, and we know that very, very many leaders are coming from America to Europe and beyond. It's important that it's a success, and we'll wait to see exactly who's there come the day.
Yeah, but just lastly, courtesy of your government, we're all meant to rinse our plates before we put them in the dishwasher, but you can't tempt President Xi from China to attend Glasgow. Why should they carry on washing their pre-rinsing their plates?
Well, look, even China, who people often cite as being a laggard, have made a number of moves, including a date to zero carbon their economy. I think I'm right in saying, and certainly stopping investment or paying for coal stations overseas. Of course, we want them to go further. We all need to go further. But let's see who comes. Let's wait and see the outcome of COP before we prejudge. But I'm sure it will be successful as long as we all approach it in the right spirit.
Grateful for your time. Transport Secretary Grant Shapps appearing here on LBC, where the time is 3 minutes after 8. News is next.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom, the COVID testing procedure for people arriving